Hi, my name is Tamika Mallory, and I am the co-founder of Until Freedom, a social justice organization. Growing up in Harlem was a pretty diverse experience. You know, I grew up in the housing projects, and clearly there was a lot of poverty, violence, drugs, and just things that we don't want to see any of our children having to grow up around. However, that is just one side of the story that people tell about housing projects, about Harlem, about places in New York where Black and brown people live. There was also a lot of culture. There was a lot of family-oriented activities and experiences, people who shared, people who loved one another, people who protected one another. And so I wouldn't choose anywhere else in the world to grow up than in Harlem. I feel like as a young person who had parents who were very active, as activists and organizers within the social justice movement, fighting police brutality, fighting against some of the social ills harming our communities. Being in Harlem and having two activist parents, I got to see a lot, because Harlem was truly the mecca of where Black organizing was happening in the 80s and even beforehand. And so I feel like my experience in Harlem really prepared me in a lot of ways for what it is that I do today, because being able to see everyone from people from the Nation of Islam to the Black Church to the civil rights organizations, the NAACP, you name it, it was all happening in Harlem. And we were able, as young activists coming up, to pull a little piece from every part of that rich history and culture and to use it to develop into the strong leaders that we have become. I would say that gun violence is the issue that really strikes a chord in my heart the most. I experienced in my personal life the devastating impact of gun violence and what it can do to really hurt and harm families and to destroy people. My son's father was murdered 18 years ago. He was murdered when my son was 2 years old, and he today in 2020 is 20 years old. In fact, he's about to turn 21. And for all of this time, he has not had his father, because his father was shot down. He was shot twice in the head and chest and left in a ditch for 2 weeks before his body was found. Since experiencing what it's like to lose your partner, it has been extremely difficult raising a young Black male. I believe that all children, but particularly in a society that criminalizes and demonizes Black men, we need our fathers. We need Black men in the household. And having lost Jason, Tariq's dad, has been a devastating feeling for us as a family, but I could not even begin to express what it's meant to his children. And also to the greater society, how we just lose Black men constantly at the hands of guns and those who are using guns. And America seems to have a very hard time addressing what it takes to really heal some of the ills that are causing people to pick up guns to deal with conflict and pain. And so as an activist and as an organizer, it's really been one of my passions and also just a goal of mine consistently, that no matter what I'm talking about, if I'm speaking about reproductive justice and Black women having children, I'm constantly raising the issue of how some Black women are afraid to have children because gun violence in their community is so out of control. So everywhere I go, I deal with the issue of gun violence. And I try my best to ensure that everyone understands that gun violence is not just, some guys in the hood using guns. It starts at how they're being manufactured, also how they're being checked in terms of sales in our country. And it also goes all the way down to the feeling that someone has inside that makes them pick up a gun instead of picking up a pen and pad. I think social media has certainly helped social movements be stronger and have more of a voice and also have more of a reach. We have to be able to connect just in the same way that media is being used in some instances against us. We need to be able to use media to fight back, to push back against those narratives. And because of the fact that unfortunately we as people of color and people who are in social movements don't actually own major mainstream media, we need to be able to use our platforms, our little device, our phones, to connect with millions of people around the world. So that's a great thing about social media. I certainly use it for that purpose. And when I think about the Women's March, which garnered 5 million people around the world to stand up for justice and to protest the election of a fascist in Donald Trump, I think that without social media, it would not have happened. However, there is no replacement for real live grassroots organizing. We find oftentimes that while social media is booming on a particular issue, while people may be talking about a particular candidate online, it doesn't always resonate to folks showing up at the polls or getting out in their communities to follow up on whatever the discussion is online. So the only way to be able to have those things translate into real action is that people, our leaders, and those people who are thought leaders, and even individuals, just everyday people, have to understand the power of putting boots on the ground, meeting with, organizing with, and talking with people who look like you about the things that matter to you. We are actually in a time that is the most uncomfortable for almost every person who claims to be woke. If you're paying even the slightest bit of attention, this is not a good time in your life, in your home, in your personal space. You know that there is something really wrong with America. And so that in itself should be a motivating factor that you have to participate in one way or the other. Either you're going to give your time or your dollars, but you're going to support some cause that is working to address the concerns and the danger that our communities are facing. But then there is this other part, and it is this thing that just has to be in you. I can't give it to you. There's no other leader. Your pastor can't give it to you. You have to decide within yourself that you want to be a part of the solution and not be a person who has a problem for every solution. Because we love to sit around and complain about everything, but we have yet to realize our power when we come together. So I have to say to people who feel burned out, I'm burned out too. But God forbid that Dr. King or Rosa Parks or Harriet Tubman or all of these leaders that we love to talk about, that they would have been too burned out to get up and continue to fight. We wouldn't be sitting wherever we're sitting today, being able to access some of the things, some of the benefits of the social movements that have come before us. So I get the question often, how do I mentally deal with it? It's like you're burned out. We're all burned out. There's way too much going on in our society. And we're out here fighting and we're going at it every day. And then they say, and how do you mentally stand up to this? It's just really too much for any one person to have to try to sustain on their own. And that's exactly what I don't try to do. I have found my tribe of other individuals who love up on me. We understand one another. We work together. And we know that it's not one of us, but all of us that will literally change not just America, but our own personal circumstances and situations. So I suggest to you that if you're feeling like, what can I do for my mental stability in this space, you have to find like-minded individuals and work together. Don't be about the I, but be really, really committed to the we. And also make sure your group, your tribe, your crew has a good time. We like to have fun. Every city we go to, doesn't matter if we're fighting for prisoners in Parchman, or if we're fighting some other issue in Alabama or even in New York City. We find a way to get with the local community, to have a good time, to go out for music, for drinks. It doesn't have to look like something that's boring and just an unfulfilling experience just because you're fighting for justice. In order for us to be whole, we have to pour into one another and ensure that no one is defining for you who can be in this work. You can be, doesn't matter what your background is. I believe there must be space for every single Ray Ray and every single Keisha at the table. As a Black woman rising, I would say that I want my legacy to be that every fight I've been involved in, I have centered those people who are most impacted, that their voices have been heard, that it's been less about me and more so about those people who actually are dealing with the circumstances that we are claiming to fight for or against. We have to be a people who bring those most marginalized voices to the table. And I want people to say about me when I'm gone or when I've retired on the beach with a Mai Tai in my hand, I want people to say, long live the Tamika Mallory that truly put her people first.